Much. Remember one time I said the book of Proverbs, as one seminary professor said, it's like opening up a jewelry drawer that's just stuffed with random gems and stuff, and you just take one out and look at it, but there's no order to it. That's kind of how the book of Proverbs is sometimes. So, with that, let's look at a few Proverbs. Proverbs 10:19. When words are many, transgression is not lacking, but whoever restrains his lips is prudent. So, what kind of transgressions might occur when words are many? No, it says plural. It can be more than. I think there's different ways that we might sin when there's a whole lot of talking going on. So let's just try to list a few ways that we might sin. Gossip. The more you talk, what are you going to do, maybe? Talk about people and so forth. So I think gossip is one way that, if there's a whole lot of talking going on, there's a danger of it going to gossip. Okay, that's a good one. Others.
Lying.
Raise your hand, son.
Lying is good. Self-boasting.
Okay, lying. Oh, I just love to pick on you.
Yes.
Lying, self-boasting. So first of all, lying, you said lying, right? Yeah, you
I didn't raise my hand, so it was like I didn't say anything. I got it back.
I see where words are plenty.
Yes.
Somebody told me this week, I watched a Bible class online, but all I hear is laughing. No. How could there be lying? Now I'm going to come to self-boasting, but how could there be lying?
Well, it's because as you continue sometimes to talk too much, you exaggerate.
Exaggerate the truth a little bit.
Exaggeration.
Yeah.
It's a lie.
Yeah, it's a lie. I think sometimes exaggerations happen. Self-boasting, right? Pride. You want to expand on that, Josh?
So it's a subtle drift. When whenever you start to more or less run your mouth, for lack of a better term, and you start to get engrossed in your own story and engrossed in in everything, you start to not only exaggerate the truth, but you start to relish being the center of attention.
Okay, being the center of attention. Yeah. Other ways. I think sometimes when there's a lot of talk, you might make rash promises. You might agree to do something and you sit back and say, oh, why did I ever agree to that or something? I think rash promises sometimes. Any other examples that come to mind? Sure.
Well, I just think using unkind words, if you're not thinking about it, you're not being kind.
And there's going to be a lot of Proverbs talking about that very thing, but I think we all realize it, but we always all forget it, that sometimes communication, it's easy to step on people's toes without wanting to, right? And sometimes maybe the more we talk, the more we might step on somebody's toes. So unkind words, even though we maybe didn't even mean them that way, right? Yeah. Okay. Do I see other hands? John? Well, he's giving me this kind of like, he doesn't know if he wants to bid or not here.
I just think it blurs into the next one, but you can often show how much you care not by what you say, but just by listening.
Yeah, and that does get us into the next one a little bit, yeah. But again, let me ask you this before we get into the next one. Why is it so hard for us sometimes not to have a whole lot of words? Why is it so easy to have a lot of words in a discussion? I mean, that's kind of a hard question, but what often makes people somewhat uncomfortable, maybe to approach it that way? Silence. A lot of times people get real uncomfortable with silence and they want to fill up the silence and they just start talking and maybe babbling a little bit because, a lot of us are not comfortable with silence. There's a always interesting when you're preaching, and then if you have a little period of silence, you see all the heads will come up. You know, what's happening, you know? Silence is unnatural for a lot of people. So a lot of times we just keep on talking. But then John got us into the next one. To answer before listening, that is folly and shame. You know, communication is two ways, right? Speaking and listening. So answer before listening. So the question I have on your sheets, why is listening so difficult? There's various reasons for this also. Why sometimes might it be hard to listen? He wrote it.
I learned.
You learned.
Sometimes it becomes hard to listen when they just ramble on and on and on.
Okay, sometimes if people don't get to the point or they ramble, yeah, it's hard to listen. You're going, get to the point or something, right? I think sometimes it's that.
Well, I don't know if this is a good answer or not, but when you're sharing something with someone, and then they immediately tell us a story that relates to it, it doesn't feel like it's really a listen.
Okay.
Does
But
that,
I think what you're saying, if I'm listening to you, well, I think I hear you say, sometimes,
they just top your story. And so they really didn't listen to what you were saying. They just were thinking about how it applied to them.
sometimes it seems like there's sometimes people, if you're sharing something, especially like a problem,
Yes,
they always have, I can up that, and I have that problem, it was worse for me.
Yes.
And every time you talk, they say, okay, they're gonna have a problem that's hard. Yeah, I think sometimes, and then you just sit there, they're not really listening,
No.
right? Another reason why listening might be hard.
This might have applied to the last one, but I've noticed sometimes if you're really trying to think of the right words to say after, they look at you, and then I've even had people go like this, like, come on, say something.
I'm
And
sorry, I did that to
I'm
you.
like, I'm just trying to choose the right
Right.
answer,
Or remember
and they
the
get
words.
impatient, you know.
Okay, but I think you also touched something else. A lot of times when we are coaching people, especially how to witness to LDS, but to witness to anybody, we often say do it in pairs at least, And the reason we say that for a couple of reasons, the Bible often, Jesus often sent all his disciples 2 by 2. But one of the reasons is because if you're witnessing to somebody and they say something, often the tendency is for you to think ahead.
Yeah.
What am I going to say next?
Yeah.
And you don't really listen, but if there's two of you, it's a little bit easier at times to listen. But I'm always thinking ahead. Okay, what am I going to say next?
On that point, which was, so to answer before listening, a lot of us, myself, I'm probably the most guilty one. We tend to listen to respond and not listen to understand.
yes.
Oh, there you go. Yeah.
So, and I think that's where, because I'm a fixer, so I'm listening to fix.
Right.
Not listening to understand.
And most men are. Yeah. Yeah. Well, differences between males and females, right? Generally speaking, women often talk to build a relationship, and men say, relationships, what's that? Right? Yeah. I just want to fix it, right? We had a member years ago, probably one of the wisest husbands I know. Whenever his wife came to him with a problem, his standard answer was, do you want me to listen or fix it? He just said, I really don't know what you want from me, so tell me, And there's a wise man right there. Okay, I think sometimes listening is hard just because we get distracted too. You just get distracted, there are other things happening. Listening takes hard work. It doesn't come easily. One of the techniques that, they teach in communication or even in counseling is, reflect back, what I heard you saying. And if you do that, it feels so unnatural at first, but it really does work pretty good. But what you often find out is when you say, what I heard you say, and they say, no, that's not what I meant. But at least they can say, okay, what did you mean, right? But a lot of times, if we do that, we somehow did not listen very well. During COVID, there's been a lot more distancing and so forth. What's the difference between talking to somebody on the phone and doing like a Zoom or, when you can see them, a FaceTime or something? What will be the difference, do you think?
I can't see you roll your eyes. Facial.
What?
They can't see you roll your eyes.
They can't see you roll your. But the point there is, they say in communication, I forget what the percentage, maybe some of you know, but it's like close to 70% communication is body language. Right? I mean, and so if you can't see somebody, so if you think about it, when I can't see somebody, I might be totally not understanding them. But how about a written communication? How many times, like you get a letter or email or something, or
Text.
a text, you go, what brought this on? And the lower you go, the easier it is to assume, to make wrong assumptions. So there's a lot of things there about listening. Anything else why listening is so difficult? Any other thoughts on that? Listening to respond and to understand. I'm going to write that one down, Josh. But look at what it says. Listening sends strong message, either good or bad. Note that poor listening can result in shame. Isn't that kind of interesting when it says to answer before listening, that is folly and shame? How come poor listening sometimes can result in shame? Can you think of examples of how somebody who's listened poorly might result in shame?
If you misunderstand the intent of the conversation and you approach it that I know that this person is upset with me or this person is being difficult, then I'm going to respond from that place, and then I end up being wrong and kind of fracturing the relationship.
Right. A lot of times you just took it completely wrong, and I think we all know people who relationships have just been almost destroyed because of something like that, and then years and years later they might get together. Oh, you didn't mean that at all. You know what I mean? That has happened. That does happen. It can happen to shame, or else it might not ruin the relationship. If I took somebody wrong, I might act on that, and they'll go, "Why are you doing that?" You go say, "Well, I thought this is what you meant and everything." How many times, somebody says, don't get me a present or something for my birthday, and then you say, okay, what they're telling me. And then you act on that. That doesn't work. So anyway, any other thoughts on listening?
I think it's important that we get to share our perspective. If you're really listening and you're really having a conversation, you need to hear each other's perspective on whatever it is.
Right.
I don't know if that was already addressed.
No, but
You weren't listening.
spoke like a true daughter. But I think the point is we can gain a lot by listening.
Exactly.
We can gain a whole lot by listening. We never really learn more when we're talking. But sometimes when I'm listening, I can really learn. And even if I don't share that person's perspective, at least maybe I can understand it better.
Right. It has to be a two-way thing.
Right, it has to be a two-way thing, yeah. Listening is hard.
It is.
Roy?
Well, I'm sorry, you just tune them out.
Yeah, and especially if they don't think like you do. And you just say, and sometimes you just have to really listen and say, when you listen, what are you telling that other person? When you listen carefully, what are you telling that other person? What message are you sending?
Care.
That you care, right? And then you respect them, you care, and so forth. Again, using our experience at Truth and Love, when we have this whole program of having LDS missionaries, we invite them to our houses, and worked out wonderfully, but usually what we say is the first 2 times you meet with them, all we want you to do basically is listen. I always tell people, bite your tongue until I see blood running out of your mouth. Because that way you're showing respect, and you're understanding their perspective and all that, So, any other thoughts on listening? Okay, answering. Now we're going to get a few about answering. Proverbs 15:28. The heart of the righteous weighs its answers, but the mouth of the wicked gushes evil. I just love that, gushes evil. But really, what is the point of weighing its answers? How does somebody weigh their answer? The picture there is, kind of looking at my answer, looking at, weighing it, just getting exact measurements, if you want to say. But what does that really mean to weigh?
Process it.
Okay, process. Explain that.
Well, I have to process it with Ron, because he has a whole different perspective.
Okay.
And then he helps, for me, I have to process.
Okay. And what do you mean by process?
I have to think about it.
Okay.
I have to weigh all the, whatever it is, and then talk to him.
But I think you said something in the beginning that was pretty important. You realize he has a different perspective.
Right.
First of all, weighing the answer means they're not coming at it from the same direction I'm coming from it.
Well, oftentimes I come from the heart
Yeah.
and the hurt, and then he can look at it and kind of just show me what it really is or
Right.
isn't.
Right. Yeah. And again, males and females are different that
Yeah.
way, generally speaking. Harry?
I just know I've missed a lot of opportunities to witness or show how much I love the Lord because I didn't stop and weigh what I was going to say or.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And let's just explore that one a little bit. What would you have done differently, I guess, if you would have stopped?
I probably would have turned the conversation in a different direction than going with the flow, going with what
Oh, okay.
everybody else is.
Okay. Yeah, going with it. I think sometimes when we weigh our answers, we also, now I realize they're coming from a different perspective, but now I can say, okay, if I respond this way, how will they take it? They might take this the wrong way, and I might say the same thing but in a different way. John?
Yeah, I think continuing that thought of how will they take it, or maybe what is the purpose for which I'm going to speak, You can give a pat answer and then be quick, or maybe you could engage further. I think about how Jesus often answered with questions. And the reason he did that was so that they dig in even more and process, rather than just, he could have given all kinds of pat answers.
Right.
And so I think weighing our response sometimes is I want to engage further on this, and maybe it's not going to happen all here and now.
Yeah, I think what you're saying, John, too, is that sometimes if we don't give them the whole enchilada in our answer, and they might say, okay, I want to learn more, rather than, another thing we say in witnessing is don't back up the dump truck and dump the whole truck on them, but that's sometimes what we do. So, weighing your answer, though, is maybe understanding where they're coming from, understanding how they might take my answer, maybe going a way that, how can I extend this conversation in a positive way. There's a lot. Other thoughts about weighing, Josh?
Well, Jesus was perfect at everything, but, one quote that, that I heard once is, God and Jesus, they're perfect at loving us where we're at. And I think that this, that point applies here is, understand that not everybody's ready to have the dump truck,
Right.
poured on them, and that's something that I have to learn over and over again. Is, sometimes they just need to know that you're there, so you can have that conversation in the future.
Yeah.
And so just love them where they're at, and then continue to love them where they're at, and that's.
And part of the way that will condition our answer, because if we love them where they're at, we're not going to be talking over here. We're going to be, focusing right there. No, that's a good point too, Roy.
Sometimes you gotta dump the partial truck on them, just a little bit.
Well, yeah, it all depends on the situation. I mean,
Yeah.
there's times when we also tell people, you just gotta get your witness out there, and that's usually after a while, not the first response, but.
Well, he talks about, where he can't come with spoke, directly to him and in a harsh way,
Right.
to get the point to him.
Right, and sometimes you gotta get the point to them and speak frankly, maybe. Terry?
Well, my comment about, the opportunity to witness was like in a group discussion
Right.
about something. And what I find happens later down the road is they misunderstand who I am and what I believe, because I didn't
Right.
go in that other direction.
Right.
And it isn't a bad thing. I'm not gonna make them feel
Right.
isolated. They're just gonna know that this is how I feel.
Yeah, this is who you are. Right. So, let's look at the next one. 15:1. A gentle answer turns away wrath, but a harsh word stirs up anger. I have a question about the gentle answer first. Does giving a gentle answer mean we should not be truthful? How does a person balance truthfulness with gentleness? I think a lot of times when people hear the word gentleness, that means I can't stand up for the truth, or I'm going to become a doormat, different ways, things like that. How can you be gentle but truthful and not become a doormat and all that? I think sometimes this is a delicate balance, but how can you do that? Tasha?
Based on your tone, the way you deliver something will allow them to respond a certain way.
Okay, tone, again, that's part of body language a little bit too, but tone, and again, I think especially, I always thought, I would wish to, like when I'm reading what Jesus said in the Gospels in church, I so wish I would know what tone he said those words in. I mean, I read an article this week where the writer said, I think he was correct, he said, when Jesus said, I am the good shepherd, he used the word, he thundered it out. Like he spoke I am the good shepherd, And I'm going, I never thought about that way, But I wish sometimes I heard the tone, because, just like the woes he said to the Pharisees. And we think, well, he's telling them how bad they are. He's saying it with forcefulness, but then somebody said, well, in the Aramaic or the Hebrew, the word for woe is oi. And you can't say that in anger. It's like, oi vey. It's like pain and sadness. Just that little thing is saying, oh, maybe his tone was so different. So the way we say something is so important, right?
Yeah, because a lot of times an aggressive answer will put them on the defense.
Right.
And then they're going to defend their point instead of looking at maybe what you're wanting to say.
Right. Yeah. Aggressiveness usually causes this, right? Yeah. And that often happens. I think the other thing when it gets to a gentle answer sometimes too, things we might have put on, but we should never assume and always put the best construction on what people, who they are and what they say. So if they say something that irritates me, I have to assume maybe there's something else going in their life. That's not just me. So if they bite my head off, maybe they're having a hard maybe they've just had a hard day, maybe they're having problems at home, at work, I can't just assume that they're mad at me, for example. Things like that. So I think a general answer is allow our tone, don't make assumptions, don't come back with an aggressive answer because you know what, that's going to happen. You just might get into a battle royal right away. What's the significance of the singular word here? It says harsh word. It doesn't say words. It says harsh word. What's the significance of that?
It's only one.
Yeah, and sometimes, and we know that, right? Sometimes it only takes one word and we have devastated somebody, right? I mean, I bet you we all maybe can think of when somebody says something to us, and they might have said a whole lot of good things, but they said one harsh thing. And guess what sticks to our minds, right? That one harsh thing they said. Words are really deadly. They can be very deadly, and we're going to look at that more next week, but they can be very deadly. They can be also very helpful, but it doesn't often take a long. It could be that one word. How many children have really been put at a great disadvantage in their life when their parents would just call them, "You idiot," and they heard that from their parents. And you don't have to hear that whole lot. And the parents and the child is warped. It's going to take a long time for them to get any self-esteem after that. And that happens. I mean, that happens. A teacher over here is nodding, right? Yeah.
They tend to, I was just going to say, they tend to start believing that's what they are.
Oh, sure.
Exactly.
Yeah. I mean, if people say something about me enough, I'm going to start believing it, right? And so we have to be really careful. Or at work, whatever it is. So we have to be careful that one word can really do something. Any other thoughts on that? Okay, turn over the back side. Another one about gentleness. Through patience, a ruler can be persuaded, and a gentle tongue can break a bone. A gentle tongue can break a bone. I kind of like that one. I have a quote here from a person that says, "The quality that is praised is a refusal to be provoked. And the point is that so unassuming a weapon may win surprising victories." Just the idea here is that if you just refuse to be provoked and don't get into that angry clash of words, many times you can accomplish so much. The figure here is break a bone, but you can really you're not doing it to intentionally hurt a person, but if you answer gently, you can really maybe change your life. And really, in a sense, in this instance, we have a whole lot more than you would have with a lot of anger. So, another one, 12:16. Fools show their annoyance at once, but the prudent overlook an insult. And then here's another quote. Do you agree or disagree with this? Passionate self-defense is always of evil, whether the injury which is inflicted be justifiable or unjustifiable. So it just basically says if you are passionate self-defense, it's always wrong. Agree or disagree with that?
I disagree.
You disagree. Yeah. If you disagree, you have to say why.
I feel like sometimes you need to defend.
Okay? Sometimes you have to defend yourself.
And it's,
Or your opinion. You have to defend your belief.
Defend your belief. I'm not going to comment right now.
Whatever.
Whatever. That's a good, gentle answer.
fall off on both sides. Jesus was pretty passionate when he was defending his Father's glory in overturning tables in the temple. But it was for his Father's glory. How dare you turn my Father's house into a,
Places, yeah.
But if it's so easy for us to take words and we're protecting our glory, and that's what maybe we have to pause and say, ooh, I could go in a bad direction here.
See, when you say defend your beliefs, I don't think that's self-defense.
That isn't.
That's defending, God's honor or the truth. I mean, there's a difference between defending the truth and defending yourself. But the proverb says, prudent overlooking an insult. But I want to get back to what Terry says. Sometimes we have to defend ourselves. Agree or disagree with Terry? Do we say, Terry, you're wrong or you're right? Let's take a vote. Maybe we will have to have a recount.
I think it depends on, I guess, why you're defending yourself.
Yeah.
Are you defending what you believe? Are you defending
Okay.
it because I know and I'm right type of situation? It depends on your motivation.
Okay, motivation.
But will the manner in which I defend myself cause others to sin?
Okay. Again, a lot of it comes back to, like Tasha was saying, the tone, the manner. That's part of it. Did I see a hand, Josh?
Well, to answer this, I would have to, disagree with this, because of the word always.
Yeah.
Because of the absolute associated with it. What we're talking about here is, it depends on the context.
Right.
So, whether you're defending God's honor with something that's noble and true and defending the truth versus, am I defending my own ego and my own pride?
Right.
So, and that goes back to the other verses where letting the Bible interpret the Bible. And this is where, we have to check ourselves.
Yeah. And Proverbs are general truths.
Yeah.
And that's why the word always is a stumbling word. But I do think the general truth here is often is an act of wisdom not to respond to an insult, but overlook it. And I think the singular here is also somewhat important, and insult. Now, if there's a pattern of insults, that might be where I might have to, do something. But I think overall, if somebody insults me, sometimes the best thing is just, hey, little tough skin.
I think going back to the witnessing thing, if we're always about self-defense and maybe we're not, we're focused on defending our beliefs, it's kind of hard to, try and understand the other person's beliefs too, and just.
Right.
Yeah.
If you didn't hear Josh, good point is that if we're always focusing on defending ourselves or our beliefs, we aren't going to be listening very well either. It gets back to the listening thing too, right? We have to really realize, I think the whole thing, what the Bible really tells us a lot of times, don't worry too much about yourself. Self is not that important. Jesus, others, yourself is in third place. Any other thoughts on this one? There's just a lot of Proverbs here.
Yeah.
17:4. Ned.
Yeah, full sword or annoyance at once. Well, if you're looking to be offended, you're going to be offended. Whereas the prudent overlook an insult, you let it slide because it's not worth arguing over.
Right.
So,
Yeah. So when Sharon tells me I shouldn't sing, I'll just ignore that.
Yeah, no, you shouldn't.
You're fishing to make a joyful noise. It may not be joyful to the people around you, but it's joyful to God.
But I think you're making a really good point. If you're looking to be insulted, you're going to be insulted.
Yeah.
Yeah, we see that all the time too, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. People are just, they're almost like waiting. Are you gonna hurt me, you know?
Yeah, and I think they're the saying, don't sweat the small stuff.
Yeah, yeah. And we have to realize that insult to us is a small thing. Right? Yeah, okay.
I guess sometimes when you're trying to understand the way a person is thinking, sometimes you gotta actually talk to them to see like where that line of thinking is coming from, especially if you have two different lines of thinking. So,
Yeah. And you won't be able to do that if you come right back, right?
right.
Yeah. Well, why do you say that, you know, and things like that, yeah. A lot of this is really saying, take a deep breath. Take a deep breath, guys. I like the next proverb, 17:14. Starting a quarrel is like breaching a dam. So drop the matter before a dispute breaks out. And just think of when a dam bursts. I mean, everything is uncontrollable, right? I mean, the water just gushes through, destroys a whole lot. There's nothing can control it. And once that water is, once the dam is broken, you're not going to get that water put back behind the dam, right? So when you start a quarrel, you know, it is just like, okay, total disaster. It's going to be really hard to recover from, and you're not. There's going to be pretty much permanent damage here. So instead of starting it, drop it. You know, just drop the matter. Now there are times when we will have to have a dispute, but in many cases, at a personal level, don't worry about it. You know, how often have you heard? You know, I just heard an example of this the other week where one neighbor did something and wasn't that big, but the other neighbor got really mad, and before you know it, the two neighbors were just like at this. You go over that little thing, but what happened is, you know, both of them just wanted to start the quarrel, and it just got really bad. I think we probably all have heard of cases like that. So, any other thoughts on that one? Let's look at 13:3. Those who guard their lips preserve their lives, but those who speak rashly will come to ruin. Kind of like the first proverb a little bit, but speak rashly. I mean, we talked a little bit about that. That's pretty much kind of like where the words are many, transgressions not lacking. But, you know, when you hear that speak rashly, does that word rashly mean anything to you or connotate anything? Any connotations that are different from what we talked about? I think the parable of those who guard their lips. I think speak rashly again is speak, you know, quickly. Guard your lips. Me. I'm going to watch what I say. I'm going to be careful. Rashly is speaking without thinking. Oftentimes, it might not even be anything bad, but I just, without weighing the answer, you know, all those words about thinking, it just doesn't happen. So, John?
There's so many ways you can think, or you can speak rashly. I think sometimes too, if someone would come to you and say, okay, I'm going to tell you a secret, but you got to promise not to tell anybody. If you just right away respond, okay, you maybe just spoke rashly. Because maybe what they were about to tell you was something where they need help that goes beyond what you can offer. But they need that help, and now you have to speak to help them get that help.
We have to be very careful about any promises we make, especially like, you know, a promise, I'm not going to say something. I still remember years ago, my dad was a pastor in Michigan, and someone came to his office and said, tomorrow we're robbing a bank in Ohio. You know, should he keep that as a confidence? You know, luckily he persuaded the people to go to the police. And it was a serious, they had a whole plan, 4 of them or something. But I had one time a man who drove up, I did not know, a shiny red Corvette right up front, wanted to talk to me. He said, you're a pastor, will you keep this in confidence? And I thankfully, I said, matters what you're going to tell me. matters. He said, well, he was really mad, he was ex-military, he had some guns in the car, he said, I want to shoot myself, but I want to take a whole lot of people with me. I said, no, I can't keep that to myself. And so we did get him some help. But just think about what I said, I'm going to be quiet about that. So you have to be careful. You have to be really careful. Let's look at the last one. The one who has knowledge uses words with restraint, and whoever has understanding is even-tempered. Even fools are thought wise if they keep silent, and discerning if they hold their tongues. So is this just irony, that last part? That fools are thought wise if they keep silence? Is that just kind of say, yeah, that's just irony, that, it's just kind of sarcastic a little bit? Or is there any truth to this?
It just depends on the person that you're talking to.
Yeah.
And if they're saying something that, that is
Right.
harmful to them and to you, and
Right. Yeah. Dick, what were you going to say?
I can't think of the saying, but there is one that says, open your mouth and prove that you're full, so keep shut.
Say somewhat the same
Something
idea.
like, same like that, So, and it doesn't mean that if he keeps silent, he is not a fool, but
Right.
it just, people think that.
He doesn't show himself as one.
Yeah.
And I think this is not just irony. I think this is the first step of becoming wise.
Yeah.
The first step is saying, okay, I realize I better start watching how I talk.
Better to be thought a fool than open your mouth and remove all
There,
doubt.
that's the one.
But still, if I'm already consciously saying I'm not going to do this, that's already a step towards wisdom.
Well, I love this, proverb, because, I think it sums up everything that we've been talking about.
Mm-hmm.
And I always equate this with, with another saying, is the difference between reacting and responding is about 3 seconds.
Right.
And it's about being strategic with your words, it's about, being thoughtful about your words, about being intentional about listening. So I just think it's a good round summation.
And the difference between reacting and responding, right? Yeah. But one of the things I think we can take away from this is, like I entitled this lesson, think before you speak. However you want to say it, approach it from many different angles, but think before you speak. Next week, what we're going to look at is some proverbs that really talk about the damage words can do, and we talk a little bit about that, but also a lot of good that words can do. And we haven't talked much about that, so we're going to talk about that next week. Any final thoughts before we close? Let's close with prayer. Oh Lord, once again we are so thankful that you have covered all our sins, even our sins of speaking and listening. We realize that in these areas we can see so many times that we have fallen short, that we have unintentionally been offended when we should have been, or we did not listen carefully, or that we hurt somebody when we should not have. Oh Lord, thank you for forgiving all those sins, and now help us, Lord. Help us more reflect our love to other people by how we speak. Lord, help us to think and weigh our answers and use the right tone as we speak. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Could you